Well, then I'm going to go ahead and call this joint work session of the Board of Supervisors and the Planning Commission to order. We do have an amended agenda in front of us, but with the call to order, that's going to include me calling the Board of Supervisors to order and Ms. Rhodes, along with the roll call as well. So when the time comes, we'll roll call the Planning Commission. So if I could get a roll call, Supervisors, please.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here.
Mr. Hodges,
Here.
Mr. Garber,
Here.
Vice Chair Moran,
Here.
Chairman Miskowski.
Here. Ms. Rhodes, you.
Thank you very much. All right, if we can have the roll call for the planning commissioners, please.
Ms. Height,
Here.
Mr. Breeden,
Here.
Mr. Greenwood,
Here.
Mr. Wagner,
Here.
and Chairman Rhodes.
Here.
All right, then we come to review and adoption of the meeting agenda. Get a roll call for the Board of Supervisors, please.
May I ask a question on the agenda, if I may?
Sure thing.
I wanted to ask, since we have the presentation by the Berkeley Group kind of at the beginning, which is the pertinent portion for the Planning Commission, certainly, if the Planning Commissioners wanted to have the opportunity to recess or adjourn our portion of the meeting prior to the end of the agenda. I personally plan on staying for the duration of the meeting. Of course, Mr. Greenwood would as well, but did anyone want to have the opportunity to amend the agenda to recess or adjourn after the presentation?
Sure. I don't know that we need to amend it. I'll just go ahead
Okay.
and come to the end of that. I'll throw you the opportunity to call for adjournment of your group, and I think that'll be sufficient. But yeah, I'll go ahead. I've got a note to do that here.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So board members, we have the amended agenda in front of us. Does anybody have any questions before we adopt? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adopt the amended agenda.
So move, Mr. Chair.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moran,
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Chairman Miskowski.
Aye. Ms. Rhodes, over to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's go ahead and take a roll for the Planning Commission for the adoption of the meeting agenda, please.
Mr. Breeden,
Aye.
Ms. Height,
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Wagner,
Aye.
and Chairman Rhodes.
Aye.
Very good. Without objection, we'll move into item 4, which is presentations, zoning and subdivision ordinance update. We have with us tonight Rebecca Cobb and Kelly Davis of the Berkeley Group. We'll allow them to go ahead and begin their presentation.
All right, thank you so much. Good to be here with you tonight, and I believe the county has received the presentation. They're getting it up on the screen now, and so we just thank you for having us tonight. As mentioned, Kelly Davis is here with me as well from the Berkeley Group, and so tonight we're going to be talking a little bit more about your zoning and subdivision ordinance. Next slide, please. And so specifically for the agenda tonight, we would like to go over the results from the stakeholder meetings and the survey. And then we will dive a little bit deeper, taking some examination and some focus on some specific items that AC district standards, the accessory dwelling use, short-term business rental use, event venue, site plans required during rezoning, and then family subdivisions. So some 6 items that we'll specifically pause and have some discussion on. And then we're going to go into some other edits and kind of open up the floor and see if there's other things that you all would like to mention and bring up for changes. And then we'll talk about next steps and the rest of the schedule. Next slide. The county scheduled several groups of stakeholders, and we met with them at the end of January. We provided you all with a 5-page summary of everything that we discussed with the stakeholders. So you have that at your disposal to take a more in-depth look at what the stakeholders said. There were definitely themes and common responses in all of the groups. And some of those were that they all wanted or had a desire to make sure that we matched the character of King William with the uses. They all said that they didn't expect or didn't want big chains or big box stores and those types of things. But they did want to encourage agritourism and other tourism events. They felt like those things are things that should be pursued in King William. Also, all of the groups expressed strong opposition to the changing of the AC minimum lot size from the 5 acres to 10 acres. What we heard from the groups was that they felt like this chopped up the land. They also felt like it would still kind of block views, 10-acre blocks of houses would still kind of block and take up the open countryside. And they also felt like it would be a problem for first-time home buyers. There's a lot of loans that will not grant you a loan if you're over the 5-acre requirement. So even if you're like 5.1, you can't get that loan. And so that was their reasoning in saying, no, let's keep it at that 5 acres. They also felt like it's going to drive up the cost of the small lots. So again, hurting those first-time home buyers or someone who wouldn't be able to afford the larger properties. The groups felt that the time limits for family subdivisions were appropriate, but they would be in favor of lowering those if that was something that you all wanted to do. They could see that being okay. The stakeholders expressed that requiring site plans for rezoning was costly. They see a need for more property to be rezoned to business, and rezoning the property allows the landowners to market the property for business development. It makes it more attractive to be able to sell the property when it's already rezoning and the buyer doesn't have to go through the rezoning process. But the group felt that, landowners just entering into marketing would not be able to do a site plan and provide those details, as well as it being costly to them. Another theme we heard in the stakeholder sessions was about the road standards. There was an agreement that requiring strict VDOT standards discouraged cluster style divisions and small subdivisions, and they felt that that was the preferred over large subdivisions, and so they wanted it to be easier to achieve that cluster style or small subdivisions. So next slide. That was what we've heard from the stakeholders. Again, you've got that report that outlines it in more detail for you. The survey was mailed to landowners and was also available online. There were 520 surveys completed. 259 of those were completed online, 261 were paper. So that was surprising to me how much it was evenly split. You don't usually see numbers like that, but that was interesting. And we've provided you the full report on the survey questions as well as all of the comments that were received. Another interesting thing was the amount of comments that did come in the survey. We don't usually see quite that amount in localities. And so we took a look at the comments just to see what similarities, if there were themes, just like with stakeholders. And we found that there were, definitely similar topics, but that there were people on both sides of the spectrum, proponents and opposing certain things of the topic. And so what we'd say is just, we recommend that you all read those comments. And if there's anything from those comments that sparks some thoughts in you or things that you think should be edited in the ordinances, then please let us know and we can address those. And so across all of the surveys, agriculture and the rural nature were top priority. And these things were thought that, these should be encouraged. Following that was commercial business. And then at the bottom of this was new housing being the least desired by the respondents in the survey. Next slide. And you'll see here, this is the slide about the design standards. So, what your community looks like, what it feels like. It asks questions, about parking and lighting design, fence requirements, landscape requirements, those types of things. And you can see here by the blue bars that it was, overwhelmingly, 70% of respondents or so on average were in favor and agreed with the standards that were proposed. So, a good margin here for most of these design standards. Next slide. The next item on the survey I'd like to pull out is that we had a total of 83% of respondents felt that site plans are important to very important during the rezoning process. So this was quite different from what we heard from the stakeholders. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in a little bit. Next slide. This is looking at the questions on family division. We asked a couple of questions on this. This was a focus item that was asked to be looked at by the Planning Commission. The majority of respondents felt that both the lot size and the time requirements for family subdivisions were appropriate. Other responses were a little split between feeling like it was too much or not enough. Those, tend to be kind of a tie. But overall, people felt like they were appropriate in terms of the lot size and the time requirements. Next slide. And in the survey, we asked about the proposed changes to the AC district, and this included changes to the minimum lot size, the lot depth, the setbacks, and road frontage requirements. And the responses were somewhat split on lot size, lot depth, and road frontage, with none of these receiving a 50% or greater agreement or disagreement. And so you can see here at the top question, it's about that lot size, and you can see it's about 46% agreed with the change and approximately 40% disagreed. And so very split opinion in the survey on this item. However, increasing the setbacks on both primary and secondary roads were viewed as appropriate by the majority of respondents, with approximately 60% and 57% agreeing to those changes. So this concludes just kind of a quick look at the survey results. You do have the full report for your review, but for time's sake, we'll move ahead. I'd like to take a little deeper dive to those focus items and have some time for discussion and edits on these items. So next slide. So continuing looking at this AC in those district standards, we talked about the stakeholders opposed that lot size. The survey showed kind of a split opinion on the lot size, but overall they felt that the other standards were appropriate. We checked into your surrounding counties to see what they did and what their standards were. And they had a range in lot size from about 1.5 acres to 25 acres. And then some other things just for your consideration that we pointed out in the memo was that other localities tend to feel like, to best conserve ag lands and rural open spaces is to have lot size requirements of 20 to 30 acres. And then also another thing for you to consider is that most of your county is zoned AC. So when you're making this change, it affects a lot of the land and the property owners in your county. Next slide. So now for our recommendations. The survey response did not give enough support of some of the changes, and the stakeholders did not support many of these. So we recommended returning lot size to 5 acres, the lot depth to 20 feet, and road frontage to 400 feet. The setback increases were supported and should continue as proposed. We proposed those at 100 feet on primary routes and 75 feet on secondary routes. And then we realized that, you are working on your comprehensive plan. And so as you do that, we recommend that you identify areas on your future land use map that you really want to preserve as agricultural and as areas. You can also, set aside areas that you feel should be geared towards development. And so as part of that and part of your implementation of your comprehensive plan, you can rezone some of these development areas and be ready for business and residential use, while also protecting the areas that you don't want to develop. So that was just something that we want you to consider. But I'd like to take a moment to pause, let you think this over, give me some feedback. What do you think about this recommendation? Do you agree? Do you have other thoughts?
May I speak? Chairman?
Go ahead, Mr. Braden.
I'm hoping we're not planning on making decisions on all these tonight. I think the Planning Commission would like to take this presentation and the results, which we just got a couple days ago, and consider the advantages, disadvantages of each. One in particular, however, I'd like to bore in on is the minimum lot size. I was surprised that as many folks favored the larger lot size as they did. Assuming we go back to the current 5 acre minimum lot size, does the Berkeley Group have any suggestions on how we can maintain the rural and agricultural look and feel for the county that was the overwhelming response of the citizens who filled out the survey?
Yes, and so one way to really protect that is, like I mentioned here in the third blue box here, is to identify in your land use map those areas that you really want as ag and conservation, and be able to shift and start doing some rezoning, so that those who are in the ag districts are really interested in the farming and the open space. They're leaving those open. They may do a family, subdivision or something like that to grant a piece of land to someone, but generally it's going to stay as is. And then you'll have, properties that are zoned residential or business that can be developed and be more available to people, so that they're not, just cutting these other, portions up. So that would be one thing that I would say. In terms of, having some additional time, I understand that needing to digest this. We did send out an email, and for whatever reason, it wasn't received 2 weeks in advance of this meeting. So I'm sorry you didn't get that, but I do want us to be mindful of our time frames. And I was hoping to have basically these changes drafted up by the end of this month, so that we could meet again in May to continue this discussion to keep this on track. So if there's any other thoughts on this tonight, I would definitely like to hear them.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr. Garber.
Do we have the raw numbers from this survey? When we're talking about, it was reasonably close. If you move it 2 or 3 percentage points one way or the other, so far as the lot size, do we have the raw numbers?
Is that question
maybe
Berkeley Group, sir? Because I certainly don't have your answer.
No, I wanted to ask her. I was asking permission to speak.
Yeah, so, and I believe the survey report, it does show you, number of responses, number of people who said no opinion. And we can also give you, exact percentages. I know that not every chart, because of the size of them and the size of the amount of information, we couldn't give exact percentages on each line item. But if you have specific ones that you'd like to know, yes, we can give you that information.
Yeah, basically on the lot size issue, my concern is the last week, or somewhere in the last 2 weeks of the survey, it was 4 ads in the Country Courier, by a group called King William Alliance. And I think that might have moved the number some.
Okay, thank you. We were getting a little bit of feedback, but I think I heard
We're
what you were
still
saying.
getting
I'm sorry.
It's not just you, Stuart, it's her too.
Oh, it is.
Travis Wolf?
I've got it fixed now.
Okay.
You do?
I was wondering, Chairman, if I may have an opportunity to speak? Mrs. Janey.
Yes, Ms. Rhodes, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Cobb, thank you for summarizing that. It's helpful. I have a question because I don't think the public knows. If you could indicate how many people comprise the stakeholder groups and then how you all are weighting consideration of those groups in terms of in comparison with the citizen surveys.
So there were, I think, 20 some people who were contacted and asked to be stakeholders. On the day of stakeholder interviews, we had 11 participants. And in terms of weight, you know, really on most items, there was agreement. And it's only on a couple of items that there was disagreement. And in terms of, because in this instance, because the survey was not as conclusive as the stakeholders were very firmly and very adamantly against this, that kind of weighed this decision for this recommendation.
I would only observe, Ms. Cobb, that, and I'm not disagreeing, that the majority of the stakeholders did oppose the larger lot sizes, but it was not unanimous. There were 3 of the 4 groups that opposed it. So thank you. That's all the questions I have on the lot size.
Mr. Chairman, Don Wagner, if I may.
Go ahead, Mr. Wagner.
Stuart had asked a few minutes ago for the numbers that had agreed or disagreed on the lot size. That number would be 53% or 472. Excuse me just a minute.
I think it was 49%, wasn't it?
It was 49%, but not everybody responded, so 14% or 16% didn't respond. So when you take those out, what comes out of that is 53% of those that responded were in favor of the change in the lot size, and 47% disagreed. So the way it was termed by the Berkeley group was that since it was shown as 46% out of the total of the 520, that it was not a majority. But in fact, of those that responded, it is a clear majority. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, question, Warren.
Go ahead.
Ms. Cobb, of the stakeholder groups, were there individuals that were on more than one stakeholder group?
No, sir. Each stakeholder group had, 3 or so individuals. They only participated one time. So they were, they might have had multiple interests or multiple facets to their interest, but they only participated one time. And I want to say too, this is our recommendation. You're welcome to take it or leave it. And so that's what I'm looking for is, the majority or the consensus of you all, do you feel that you want to go with our recommendation? Do you have a different recommendation that you think we should do? Let me know how to edit your document for you. That's what I need.
This is Kelly Davis, if I can add on to what Rebecca was saying. And I'll just add that, zoning district standards, your lot sizes is really only one component of a variety of different tools that you can use as a county to encourage agricultural preservation. So there's tax incentives, there's zoning certainly, and there's different ways to approach zoning in ag districts. And one of the big reasons why we've decided at this point that our recommendation is to scale back to your existing standards is because you have an ongoing comprehensive plan process. And Rebecca mentioned that, but we feel like this is a big change, and 46% are agree with the lot size change. The others either had no opinion or disagree with it. But we feel like this is a sensitive topic. It deserves additional attention through your comprehensive plan process before moving on. And through that process, also looking at the other tools that are available under state code to encourage your preservation of rural areas. So I just wanted to add on to what Rebecca had said, and that's some of the justification for that change. Thank you.
So are there any other thoughts, or would you like me to move on to the next focus item?
If I may, if none of the other, do any of the other planning commissioners or supervisors have anything? Because I've already spoken, so if anyone else wants to speak, but I did want to say something else. Does anyone else want to speak before I continue on?
I had something, but you can continue. It's just
Okay. Well, all right. So you have a number of recommendations, some of which I would agree with, some of which I would not. I hope we're not going to be going through all those tonight. There may be some additional things. In fact, I know there's some additional things that have been brought to my attention that I would like us, the planning commission, to have a work session on. Going back to the 5-acre minimum lot size, the future land use map is about 13 years old right now. We need to update that. And once we've updated that, we'll have some additional RR and other places first-time home buyers can buy in and move into our county. For those areas that remain agricultural, you're still recommending that once we've updated the future land use map, once we've identified additional RR areas, for those areas that truly are agricultural, you're still recommending a 5-acre lot size, and we can maintain the rural character with a 5-acre lot size. Is that correct? Thank you.
I would say at that point, you may, after a comprehensive plan is done, you're going to go back to your zoning ordinance and edit it then to make sure it's, complete and flowing with what you have established in your comprehensive plan. And so it may be at that point when you do a zoning map amendment that you also then change lot size. Maybe it's, a certain portion of the county is, this type of agricultural district. You might, at that point say we would do 20 acres as a minimum lot size. Whatever is appropriate could be updated at that time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Don Wagner, if I may.
I'll tell you what, Mr. Greenwood had,
Sure, go ahead.
and I'll let him go first, and then we'll return to you, Mr. Wagner.
Go ahead.
Yes, Ms. Cobb or Ms. Davis, I was wondering, like you said, there were 500 or so odd surveys that were turned back in, but how does that compare to the total number of surveys that went out or the total number of residents that we have in the county? Because that's what people don't understand either. We're basing all this on just about 500 surveys, and there's 17,000 citizens in the county. So I still don't feel comfortable. I was hoping it was going to be a lot more coming back than 500, but do you have any of those specific numbers on that? And like,
I would have to rely on Sherry to supply the number of surveys that were actually sent out.
okay. And then about the 5-acre sites, I know, as we have discussed in planning commission meetings before, I mean, all the sites around here that I've known, all my friends, all relatives, all have way less than 5-acre sites now. Do we have a number? And I guess this might be something for Sherry too. How many sites are there that are less than 5 acres currently?
Yeah, that would be something that you could, certainly consider. And if, how many of those are, already have homes on them, or how many are open and available for building, those are, valid questions. And I think Sherry could, get you that information if that was something you were interested in.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you. What I wanted to say is that I think we're all concerned that we got the cart before the horse here. We did the ordinances before we did the comp plan. But irregardless of that, once we finish these ordinances, whatever comes out of them is what we're going to work with until we finish the comp plan. Once we finish the comp plan, if we see issues there, then we can go back, can and should go back to the ordinance and revise the ordinance to be compatible with the comp plan. And one of the things I wanted to say in that regard, a lot of the concern of citizens of this county and concerns that I personally have had for a long time are the way, when I look at the zoning, when I look at the land use map, particularly in the upper end of the county, there are roadfront lots eating up the agricultural zone. They take away from the feel that most of the residents in this county, or most of the respondents in this county, have said they want. And in particular, when you go from the courthouse south from the courthouse to West Point, along Route 30 and on the secondary roads off of Route 30 all through that area, there are tremendous areas of open farmland. Homes are set back, and these are mostly older homes. The older homes are set back several hundred feet from the road. And what you see there is rural agricultural land. And I think that's what people want to see. So in the event that we have an issue with this, once we complete the ordinances, then I think we need to, we should and can take that up in the comp plan. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Well, I'll say for my end in closing, I haven't been personally shown a very compelling reason to change what we're doing. As Mr. Wagner just kind of stated in his statement there, in the second district, we're not having a tremendous issue with roadfront development and agricultural lots being consumed. So I don't want to take away tools for certain landowners. You discussed in your what you had in the packet about people that are land rich and cash poor. I certainly don't want to take away opportunities, for those individuals to convert some liquidity when needed. I don't want to hamper us with a lack of choices and opportunity, to cover for a problem that's maybe happening in one district and not another. So, I think we need to, if we're looking at this broad strokes, maybe we need to take a more laser focused look at that type of restriction. And maybe we can do that again once we're completed with comp plan and look at what the land use map looks like, look at what we're currently facing as far as development pressure in these districts, and not, needlessly hamper, individuals' choices to cover a problem that maybe is occurring on a smaller scale, is my personal thought. I haven't been shown a compelling reason to change what we're doing.
Right, it sounds like you all need to discuss that further to kind of come to some, consensus on these lots and the setback standards and that sort of thing. So for the sake of time, we will continue on with the presentation and look at the next focus item. And so the next focus item is accessory dwellings. And the stakeholders found that these were helpful, especially for elder care. And the survey showed that 63% were in favor, with most people wanting some restrictions for the accessory dwelling. When we looked at the surrounding counties, they were allowed in their ordinances with restrictions. And one of the restrictions that isn't drafted in yours right now, but could be, is to limit to 1 per parcel or to base it on acreage. So it could be, 1 per 10 acres or 20 acres, whatever you would have that be. So next slide. Currently, right now, the draft use standards are based on the location of the accessory structure. So you can see it in the figure here with the white and the blue items. So if it can equal the finished square footage of a primary dwelling when it's contained in the primary dwelling. So if it's in the basement, the attic, additional level. So any of those internal places, it can equal the finished square footage of the primary dwelling. And then it can be no more than half the size of the finished square footage of the primary dwelling when attached to the primary dwelling or located in a detached structure. And so what we've done here is recommended a few additional standards to say, let's add that it can be, only 1 accessory dwelling per parcel, be a little more specific about what can and cannot be used. And so recreational vehicles and campers and those types of things could not be used as an accessory dwelling, and that it has to meet all the building permit requirements and those types of things. And so that's what we proposed here for accessory dwelling. What are your thoughts? Do you agree with the recommendation? Do you have other standards that you would like to add?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Thank you for the comprehensive thoughts and recommendations. It's helpful. The Planning Commission just considered 2 conditional use permits for accessory dwellings, and we'll be revisiting the accessory dwellings in a work session. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, Bill Hodges from District 1. I just had one question dealing with the detached. Does that remain on 1 deed?
Yeah.
Did I hear it?
didn't quite hear the question.
I'm sorry. The detached portion, of course, the other 2 I understand. Is it all on 1 deed?
Yes, so that would be on the parcel. So and that's the reason for the limited lot size or the limited size of the building as well, so that you can tell, okay, here's the primary dwelling and here is just an accessory building to that. There are some localities that say, the accessory dwelling has to be positioned so that it could be cut off from the parent parcel at a later time. That gets into being more like having 2 primary structures on a parcel. So that's why we didn't recommend that here.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'd like to ask a question.
Yes, sir.
These comparisons of the other counties, are these comparisons for strictly attached or a combination of both attached and detached? You have King and Queen County, Caroline County, Hanover County, and New Kent County.
So it should include both.
Okay.
It's interesting, King and Queen does not allow
Yeah.
these accommodations. I find that very interesting.
So if I may, Ms. Rhodes, you mentioned that the planning commission is going to be, looking at these uses. Do you think, from those discussions that there may be additional standards that you all would come up with?
Yes, I do, and we'll work within your recommendations. Right now, the parameters create uncertainty, and the concerns are legitimate about adjacent property owners being impacted. So in any event, yes. But with a understanding, of course, and sensitivity to the fact that it's supported by the community, but just with restrictions.
Correct. Okay.
And if I may also, I appreciate your recommendations. I also think we should give some consideration to the other considerations you all brought up. You have a lot of good material there. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Are there any other comments for accessory dwelling? All right, hearing none, we'll go to the next focus item, which was short-term business rental. So next slide. So the considerations here, and just for everyone too, short-term business rental are those companies that you've heard so much about: Airbnb, VRBO, HomeAway, all of those different types are encompassed in this short-term business rental. And what we heard from stakeholders is that they found it helpful, that there's not a lot of places to stay in King Williams if someone were to come. And so they feel like this would be helpful for tourism and that sort of thing. The survey showed that there was a bit of a split opinion on this as well. And then the surrounding counties, we really combed through those ordinances and we were really surprised that they didn't address this use. And we would say that, it's because it's so popular, it could create an enforcement issue if you don't address it, as well as you could have some missed tax revenue if it's not addressed. So, utilizing this as a use does make people come and register their business and that sort of thing. And so that's helpful for you all in the tax department. You can also, in terms of restrictions, you could limit the number of times a place could be rented per year. You could also require that it has to be the owner's primary residence. So those are all things to consider for this use. And then our recommendation on the next slide is we would recommend maintaining as proposed. Because there was no definite public survey response, the stakeholders did approve the use. The Planning Commission also reviewed this in detail and edited it to what they felt suited the county best. And so we would say, maintain this use as it's proposed. However, if there are standards that you think should be added, we can add those. So just a pause again for any thoughts or anything that you'd like to add here.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Ms. Rhodes.
Sorry, I'll try not to speak to every issue. But I just want to make an observation. Like the surrounding counties, there was nothing in our ordinance at all that addressed short-term rentals. I think it's not surprising to me that the counties don't, because where short-term rentals becomes an issue is when you have townhomes or condominium projects where noise and things like that are a problem. I don't know what percentage of our county is AC. I'd say at least 75%. I mean, so that's maybe in part, but the Planning Commission incorporated an ordinance to specifically address short-term rentals, to require registration, as well as to provide the county with a mechanism for enforcement for noise violations, things of that nature, as well as a tax revenue source. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Mr. Chair, I was just wondering if there's something like this that wants to be brought in or is already in existence, do they have to come up with a use now, or is it just allowed grandfathered in, or is it, like you said, do they have to get a conditional use permit to do anything like this now?
We don't address it at all. So there are no standards.
So you can do it if you want to, and there's nothing, I guess.
Right.
Well, no, technically,
Well,
if you are
Yes.
doing this, business now, it would be not provided in your ordinance and therefore not allowed. So, they could, be considered, having a use that is not allowed, and be in violation of your zoning ordinance. So they could be flying under the radar, but otherwise, address it in your ordinance, allow it, and then everything is smooth sailing, hopefully.
Right, that's what I was wanting to bring up, because like I said, since this has come out, a lot of several have come to my attention that have been brought to my attention that are in existence that probably are not in compliance. Okay, thank you.
I'll just add though, and ask, the ordinance doesn't specifically address long-term leasing either. So if you take Ms. Cobb's argument that if the ordinance doesn't address it and it's not permitted, then the same would apply to any long-term rentals as well. Just an observation. Thank you.
Feeling noted.
Say that's potentially not the case because this is really a business use in a residential district. And so if it's a long-term rental of a residential property, it's still a residential use versus a business use. And so, and Rebecca, you can feel free to chime in too, but that's how we tend to think of it, about it in the planning world, is the business use of the short-term rental versus residential use if you're leasing it long-term.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kelly. Are there any other comments on short-term business rental? All right, we'll go to the next item, which is event venue. And so stakeholders here felt it promoted tourism. The survey showed that 77% were in favor, with half of those wanting restrictions for the use. When we looked at surrounding counties, it varied between not addressing the use to allowing limited events. Additional requirements can be added, such as requiring a permit 30 days prior to an event, as well as limiting the hours of operation of an event. Next slide. This use was added at the request of the Planning Commission, and so we would, propose maintaining it as it is currently proposed. We followed the Planning Commission's input in terms of the restrictions with the event menu. The public seems to be in favor of the use and just wants to maintain as proposed. But if you feel like there should be additional restrictions, it could be changed to a CUP, and you could address impacts more on a case-by-case basis if that was something that you wanted to do. Are there thoughts for event venue and what we've recommended?
If I may, in some instances in agricultural areas, we allow it by right, but some of the agricultural areas have fairly narrow lot sizes that may call for some additional conditions, either conditional use permit or else something in the standards that would keep it from being a major impact on their neighbors. I've gotten some feedback from some folks that live in subdivisions that are zoned agriculture, but yet they're fairly narrow lots. I think that's especially true near the river.
And I think right now, just thinking back to the standards, I think there are some standards about, any tents, any facilities for the event have to be, set back from adjacent property lines, and those numbers can be adjusted to what you all deem appropriate. Any other?
Anyone? All right, Ms. Cobb, you can move on, I suppose.
All right, thank you. So next focus item was site plans required during rezoning. Stakeholders did not support this, as I mentioned earlier. They had concerns about first-time home buyer. Sorry, that was the wrong note there. They had concerns about people, rezoning their property to market it for business. And then in the survey, we saw that they thought site plan is important. Looking at the surrounding counties, they do require plans. It varied in the level of detail. Some of them allowed their zoning administrator to give final approval. And it's common for localities to use concept plans, which are less detailed, don't contain engineering calculations, give more of a general location for improvements, and that sort of thing. So that's some things to consider. Next slide. For our recommendation, we agree with the stakeholders that site plans can be expensive, and there appears to be a need to rezone properties to business and encourage business development, but also some planning is important prior to rezoning. And so to this end, we recommend using concept plans that have fewer requirements, but give the county some comfort in the development of the property. And so would you like us to draft some language for concept plans and what they require, kind of loosening that from the site plans that you have now?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Please.
Okay, so 2 out of the 4 stakeholder groups opposed the site plans. The other 2 did not speak to it. 83% of the surveyors, the citizens who were surveyed, said it was very important to have a site plan, and 70% is an additional line item question, wanted landscaping requirements. So I'm trying to reconcile the need, because it sounds like the concept plans don't address use. And I think the citizen survey results came back because of concerns about use and what would be happening on their property next door. So would the concept plan address use and landscaping?
So if you want to include landscaping, then yes, that can be, whatever you do want to be in your concept plan, you can. However, I would say, if that list is going to be the same as the site plan, then, just have it be a site plan. I would also say, when you're rezoning, while you may not know the exact use, this is going, to be a Wendy's or whatever, it's dinner time, I'm hungry, so I'm thinking of all food places. But if you're rezoning to business and you know what the permitted uses are in a business district, then you do sort of somewhat know what is going to be there potentially on the property.
Question. Ms. Cobb, is there a way to have both in the event that a project demands a site plan versus a notional concept plan? Is there a way to delineate at some point so to push it in the right direction?
So at some point there will need to be a site plan, with the initial rezoning, you're agreeing to, okay, this is the concept. But once, something is going there prior to getting building permits and those types of things, they will have to provide a detailed site plan that's going to show exactly what it is, where it's going, what it looks like, how many parking spaces, all of those things will need to be there and be approved, through your process of the site plan approval.
Very good. That was unclear. Thank you.
Ms. Davis, I see your hand raised for acknowledgement. You can go ahead.
Yes, I was trying to be unmuted to help and Rebecca out with her response. One of the things that I'd like to point out, and Rebecca did hit on this, is that site plans are very expensive, and there are changing stormwater requirements, state code requirements that get incorporated into your site plans. And so if a property owner is trying to move forward with what we will often call speculative rezoning, so they don't have a tenant ready to go into this commercial space but they believe that there is a market for it, to move forward with that full site plan process without knowing exactly how many parking spaces are going to be required for that specific use, as an example, and therefore linking those impervious surfaces to the stormwater requirements and on. It can be quite an investment if that use were to change and then, for instance, require different parking standards. And so the concept plan will require you, as Rebecca said, to show where the placement of the building on the property, show the location of stormwater and parking and landscaping. You can require, or with rezonings, it's the applicant can proffer landscaping as part of the rezoning process. They can, what we would sometimes call, proffer out specific uses if there's a specific use that you might not want in that location. That can all be part of that rezoning approval, but it reduces some of the burden so you can be more business friendly and adapt to changing situations as they arise, changing markets as they arise, and not have to go through an entire rezoning process because of a minor adjustment to a plan. Then that comes in at the site plan stage and allows flexibility for the applicant to work with staff and planning commission through the site plan process. I hope that added some additional clarification and didn't muddy the waters further.
Anyone else?
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Breeden.
We've recently had a rezoning on 360. I opposed requiring a site plan because it was in an area that we thought should be commercial. So it didn't seem logical to require a site plan. What I was hoping for was what I was calling naively, maybe not a preliminary site plan, which it sounds like the Hanover conceptual plan, the Caroline general development plan, and the narrative for New Kent would all fit the bill of what I was envisioning. Because again, if you're doing a rezoning, this assumes that we've updated the future land use map. The citizens have weighed on what they think should be where. The supervisors and planning commission have agreed on what should be where. When you're doing a rezoning at that point, it's a little bit different than where we are right now with a 13-year-old future land use map. So my question for the Berkeley group, of the Caroline, Hanover, New Kent things, you would recommend the Hanover conceptual plan, or are there things in the Caroline and New Kent that you would want to see us incorporate? Thank you.
Yeah, I can't answer that right off. It's been a while since I've looked at the details of what they require in each of those, but we could definitely, analyze and take the best parts of that for the concept plan that you all would require.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mr. Chairman, just a
All
quick
right, go
question.
ahead.
Going on the same thing, that's one of the problems, like Mr. Breeden said, it's such an old plan that we have now, comp plan, and trying to get maybe businesses to stay on the 360/30 corridors. And since we don't have it set up in our comp plan, somebody, or maybe, I don't know, maybe Ms. Cobb or Ms. Davis would say, should we set up an area in there that specifies, go ahead and rezone all that area on the 360 corridor within a certain distance of the highway as commercial, so that, like you said, you wouldn't have to be everybody going through individual rezonings, or is that something that would take place in the comp plan, like you said earlier, and just since we don't have it, that's all the issues that we're having to deal with right now.
I think that definitely would answer some of it. And I think it needs to be a two-phased approach. I think you want to start with the comprehensive plan there so that you can get that public feedback on those specific areas that you're talking about. And once, the public agrees to that and you map it in your comprehensive plan, then yes, you can, go right to your zoning map and remap those areas so that it is zoned and ready for business. And it does help alleviate some of the concern here.
Thank you very much.
I'll just go ahead and chime in and say that, yeah, I think Mr. Breeden's point is probably the most pertinent, that we've got to get that use map updated. And then I think that will inform our decision as much, if not more, than any site plan or conceptual plan would, period, if we've already identified those areas on the map which we want to be commercially developed. So I guess in that vein, I would not support requiring a full site map ahead of any rezoning. But once we've got that area identified, something along the lines of a conceptual plan or a narrative. So we had some inkling of use before we went into that decision, but a full site plan, I think, is too burdensome on either the landowner who's looking for, an opportunity to market some land, or for, a business that's looking at some opportunities coming out here. I mean, one of the biggest barriers that we have that we identified, as a region, is the lack of available commercially zoned land. I mean, in addition to other barriers such as broadband and water and sewer, but this is in what we're working on here. Putting more barriers to creating more commercially zoned and available land, I think, is the wrong direction. So I'd like to see us be a little more lenient there.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I agree with Travis wholeheartedly with the concept plans. I think that's the way to go. You could do a full-blown site plan, landscaping and everything. And if the plans fall through, somebody spent a lot of money, you got a site plan that the next person that may wish to do something with that property is not even going to use. And a lot of people do, have a piece of property maybe in the 360 corridor. They would want to sell it. They would like to get it on the market as business owned to increase the valuation of it. And it would just be more money that they would have to spend. Thank you.
So I think I'm hearing, 5 or 6 people now saying that they are in favor of going with a concept plan. Is there anyone who is against going with, some concept plan drafting? All right, hearing none, then I'll mark that down as an assignment that we will move forward with drafting language to ease up on that site plan requirement during the rezoning phase. And we can go to our next focus item, which is family subdivisions. The stakeholders felt that what is drafted is appropriate. Survey, most felt appropriate size and time requirements were being supplied. Then looking at the surrounding counties, it varied quite a bit in the lot size requirement. It was, most were around 2 acres, but then when you get to ownership, we saw a combination of anything from 0 years to 15 years. And a lot of them did a combination where the front end was 0 years, and then whoever the land was given to would have to hold that land. They couldn't sell it 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. There's a little bit of variety there. Another thing to consider is that the definition of family can be expanded. Right now it's, children, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, those types can gift. the definition could be expanded to include aunts, uncles, nieces, nephews, if that's something that you wanted to do. And so next slide for our recommendation. The overall consensus seemed to be that the requirements were appropriate, so we're just recommending maintaining those requirements. Do you have any thoughts? Is there agreement to maintain this, or do you have changes that you would like to make?
Mr. Chair, if I may, I noticed that I think King, Queen, Caroline, and Hanover, they did not require any previous ownership. What are, I don't really know where to go with this. I think that that might be a penalty. It's probably some families that are looking for a piece of property that they can do that with, that they don't have a large enough piece of property at this point in time to even consider doing a family subdivision. That's just me. I think it's a penalty.
So that sounds kind of like a recommendation to edit the 5 years for the person granting the property to 0 years. Would you recommend?
No, my take on it is, my understanding of this is basically if they buy a piece of property, they can generate a family subdivision. It's no previous ownership required. Am I right with that?
Correct. The other locality,
yes.
In King William, you have to own the land for 5
Right.
years before you could grant some to a family member.
Yeah, I just think that's a penalty if it is a family out there that's looking for a larger piece of land. They may only have a 3 acre lot. You know, if they could go out and buy a piece of property, if it was no previous ownership of that required, they could go ahead and generate a family subdivision with the other standards in place. That's
So
just
would
me,
you
though.
think, right, and so in your opinion, do you think, you know, if King William had a 0 year, so that people could go out and purchase a piece of property to share with their family, how long should the person who's granted the property hold that? Do you think that should stay at the 3 years that you have drafted now, or should that be?
I think the 3 years is probably fair.
Chairman Rhodes?
We're happy. The Planning Commission is going to schedule, and after this meeting, we've got a date for a work session. I think it's appropriate to put it on our work session agenda for discussion.
Yes, ma'am. I was going to highly recommend that the Planning Commission take this on and provide a little more analysis.
Yep.
All right.
I'll just speak from my own, as far as what we've been discussing here. I've heard the most about this issue, followed closely by the minimum lot size. And from where I'm seeing this, it's quite punitive, especially to lower income individuals who've lived in the county for a long time. A lot of times they have, larger land holdings. And, one of the things that's happened for generations is that, they've given blocks of that land for other family members to be able to, afford to build houses on. And they're concerned, a lot of these families are concerned that any changes to this would compromise that tradition. And they're very worried about making any changes to it. So, I could see at a minimum for me, keeping it as it is, if not exploring, some more leniency in, either the ownership requirements or the lot sizes. But I don't want to go the other way and make this more restrictive. I think that is far too punitive to an especially, vulnerable group of citizens in the county that would really devalue their holdings in a pretty dramatic way and really compromise plans that they had for their land and for their families.
Any other thoughts on this one? All right, we can go to the next slide. That wraps up those focus items. But there may be other edits, other things that you want to consider. Utility scale solar, and the had a subcommittee, and the ARB reviewed items pertaining to their board, and they proposed edits. All of those have been supplied to you. So after reviewing those, maybe there are things that you feel are, not appropriate or need discussion. So I wanted to bring that to your attention, as well as maybe there's other use standards or subdivision standards that you want to edit. We're open to that as well. I mentioned earlier the survey comments. There were a lot of comments in the survey, and so maybe some of those have spurred some thoughts for you, and some things that you feel should be edited that I haven't mentioned tonight, as well as there's some general public comments we received, some emails, some letters that were handed in with the surveys. These contain both editorial and policy comments. With your permission, I'd like to go ahead and incorporate the editorial comments, those things that just kind of help clean up the text and make it read a little bit better. And then we can kind of circle back to the policy comments that we've received. I don't know that you all have received that information, and so I want to make sure that you have all of those letters. I'm going to have time to digest it so that maybe we can discuss that at the next work session. Or as well, Planning Commission, you've stated that you're having a work session soon, and so you can discuss any of those policy items as well, to come to some consensus on those. Are there any immediate thoughts, things that you think may need additional edits in the ordinances?
You mentioned that the letters have been received. I've seen one that I can remember. Can you all provide us with a copy of all the letters that you received?
We will. I don't believe that has been shared yet. Some of the letters came in when they mailed in the surveys and were mixed in with the surveys that we were entering in. So we'll make sure that you have those.
I had at least one citizen reach out directly to me, and I had not seen his letter that he had shared. So I would very much like to see those letters to help us wisely make any additional alterations to the draft ordinance.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Mr. Chair, could I also ask Ms. Cobb and Ms. Davis if they could provide, I know we've got a lot of stuff with the specifics from the survey, but the one that they just have tonight, the PowerPoint presentation right here, could we have these questions that you're asking for with the bulleted items? That way we know what's highlighted, so we can go over that more specifically. It might help us a little bit too moving forward.
Sure. The presentation's been shared with the county, so Sherry has access to it. And I would recommend, that she put it up on the zoning page for the public to be able to see as well, and for anyone to be able to access it.
Oh, that's a great idea. Thank you very much.
So moving on, next slide, we'll start talking about the process a little bit. We've, presented this to you before. The blue items represent public engagement. Green are your joint work sessions. The navy or the dark blue are times when we're editing or providing copies of the ordinance. We've completed those first two circles and are currently in the work session that has the red ring. That's kind of the "you were here" stamp. And so after tonight, we can start drafting a little bit. I've got some homework on concept plans to do, and then we will join back again for another work session. And then from there, we will go into public open house. After public open house, we'll come back, have another work session to let you know what we've heard at that public open house. We'll be able to tweak the document, get it into its final draft, and then advertise and have public hearings and potentially adoption. So next slide, please. We'll take another little closer look at the next steps. So for the rest of this month and into May, we'll be doing some drafting. And we do need to really get on determining dates so that we can stay on schedule. We're already a little bit behind. And I did note, Sherry pointed out to me today that I had kind of pushed out the schedule a little bit too much in your memo. And so I've corrected that here. We would be back a month just because it's taken so long to get to this work session. We had hoped to have this work session like in March timeframe, but that wasn't able. So please, look at your calendars, and we'd hope, Planning Commission, you mentioned your work session that you already have that scheduled. When is that date for you all?
So next week is not in the cards. 3 out of the 5 work days, I think the facilities are being used. So I was proposing, and the Planning Commission members are available on April 27th for purposes of our work meeting to go over the recommendations and results.
Okay. So yeah, I would say, get me those results and recommendations as soon as possible. And then we can, continue moving forward and hopefully have another joint work session to review everything in May, and then have a public open house in June. July would be the next joint work session for fine tuning the ordinance. And then August, we would do all of that work, get it to staff to review, make sure everything has been incorporated accordingly as you've asked. And then in September, Planning Commission could have public hearing, recommend to the board, and the board have public hearing in October and potentially adoption. But I do have asterisk items here. We would like to get dates set for all of those items as soon as possible. We're looking at potentially June 1st might be an option for a joint work session, and then have June open house later in the month of June. So look at your calendars, talk with staff. We'll talk with staff and see what we can come up with. But that's it for me tonight. I thank you for your participation. I keep wanting to say precipitation. But thank you tonight for chatting with me and giving a little bit of direction, and I hope to hear more from the Planning Commission.
If I may, I've received a PDF in February. The last Word version I received was sometime 6 or more months ago. Can you please send us a Word version of the current draft? We can then next week track any recommended changes we have, which make it easier for y'all to see what we've come up with, and then add your own additions between now and May. So could you please send us a Word version of the current draft?
I believe we can do that. Kelly, do you have comments on that? Sometimes we try to make sure that we keep our drafts, clean, and make sure we don't get things mixed up. So that's my only concern there. Kelly, do you have thoughts?
So I guess that really speaks to the larger process. And we did scope that the amendments would be through the joint work session process. And so is the board amenable to having the Planning Commission going ahead and drafting changes to the document? Or would you prefer, again, our process is always typically, King William has been a different story, but typically we work through all of those changes through the joint work session process. So if Planning Commission is going to go back and offer some additional changes to specific sections and want to do like strike through, underline on specific sections, I don't have a strong indication that would be a problem, but we will want to make sure that we can come back and talk to the board with those specific changes at the next meeting and highlight those so we can keep everyone on the same page.
And that's the point. By having a track changes, you can see exactly what changes we are proposing, that the board can then weigh in to say, oh, we like what you've done here, or oh my goodness, you did what? And that's fine too. So again, and so you can incorporate our track changes with the track changes you're going to be coming up with for the for the rezoning section, which makes it easy for everybody to see what's new since the last time we saw this.
Yes, I don't have any major issues with that, Rebecca.
Right,
All
so
right.
objections from our board, I'd be fine with that being the method.
I'm good with that.
Like what?
All right, thank you very much. And yes,
Thank
I'll
you.
get you the latest words draft right away.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I suppose that concludes that part of the agenda. Thank you to the Berkeley Group, Ms. Cobb, Ms. Davis. Look forward to working with you to complete this project.
All right.
That would bring us to the section of the agenda that you asked about, adjourning your group before we move on with the agenda. Ms. Cobb, I'm sorry, did you have anything to say? Okay, thanks.
Oh, she's been muted.
I was just saying thank you. That was all.
Yes, unless the Planning Commission, appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. Unless the Planning Commission objects, I would recommend someone make a motion to actually recess our portion of this Planning Commission meeting to reconvene on April 27th at 7 p.m.
I make the motion, Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
I second the motion.
Thank you. All right, can we have a roll call on that, please?
Aye.
Aye.
Mr. Breeden.
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood.
Aye.
Mr. Wagner.
Aye.
Chairman Rhodes.
Aye, thank you.
All right, the Planning Commission stands in recess, so we'll move on with the board's work session agenda to work session matters 5A, fire and EMS update from Chief Reeves.
Good evening. How are you guys doing?
Yeah. Hey.
We haven't had much change since the last meeting update from Fire and EMS. However, I would like to go over a few things that kind of stand out. This year is our planning year for SCBA replacement. We will be working with West Point, hopefully to file for a joint grant opportunity to replace all the SCBA for King William and West Point, and any needs that Mangahick may have. They did replace most of theirs this past year with funds that they had accrued. I really want to touch base mostly on the COVID-19 update. We have assisted with several vaccination clinics in the county here. The last one was on 4/16. We did over 310 people. There were a few concerns during the clinic where we had some overcrowding, and that was due to a little bit of the crunch time frame that VDH had set up for their appointments. And I've spoken with their director, and they're going to spread the appointment times out and lengthen the day a little bit. But we have a really good location for the 300 per day without affecting the business of the schools and other departments around the county. So they're very appreciative of us using that. We would, of course, like to do more, but we're, again, limited to the vaccinations coming in from the federal government. There's some propaganda out. It's coming from the CDC, and folks are asking questions apparently about which vaccine should I take, and what's better, what's worse. Basically, what it comes down to is the first vaccine that you can get, you need to take. They all are equally within a close range effective, and you should not turn down a vaccination. We have assisted with over 1,400 vaccinations in the county, and at the current time, as of 4/9/21, coming from VDH, there's currently about 1,584 people registered to receive the vaccination. So we're about 50-50 of what we're assisted with and what is registered for, even though we do know that number is going to go up as we move into phase 2. On 329, Phase 1C is progressing to Phase 2 within 1 to 2 weeks. And that's going to make things a little bit more hectic, I think, when more and more people are ready for the vaccination. VDH is planning to expand their vaccination efforts. Also, we're moving into a phase where the government is going to start allowing some of the bigger organizations, private industry, to help with the vaccination process. And the last thing I want to mention is not on the agenda at all, but it's the Funeral Assistance Fund through FEMA. Anyone who has a family member who has passed away due to COVID-19, you can go to the FEMA site and apply for grant funding. And for certain circumstances with the COVID-19 death, they are funding 100% up to a certain amount. You'll have to go there and fill out the form. We have provided links on the county website, county Facebook page, and the Fire and EMS Facebook page to be able for citizens to go. There's a video you can watch as well as the link to apply. And the last thing that I want to touch on is the smoke detector program. We've been talking about that almost every meeting for a little while. It's a little slow going forward, but we are moving forward with that program with Purina. They have agreed to become partners with King William County to help us provide smoke detectors for all of our citizens. And within a couple of weeks, we should be rolling out a policy and the availability of that to the citizens. You guys have any questions for me?
Any questions for Chief Reeves? I'll just go ahead and throw just a point in there. I know West Point and New Kent worked together on a structure fire in West Point today. By all accounts, they got on that quickly and had that the occupant out safe and the fire extinguished quickly. So just wanted to give a shout out to them for a job well done this morning.
I'd have to go ditto on that one. And the gentleman does have insurance. Should.
Oh, there goes Bill. All right. Well, while we work to get Bill back, anyone else have anything for Chief Reeves, or can we move on? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to go ahead. Let's do a brief recess until we can get Mr. Hodges back on the line. So let's go ahead and work that. We're going to stand in recess until we get him back, though.
Chief Reeves, are you still on the line?
Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question since we're in recess. Curious of, I mean, you keep us up to date with some certain things, but I've noticed a house on 360 that was right behind the veterinary clinic in Central Garage that one day I went by there, it looks like it burnt down and now it's all been demolished and leveled. Did that house fire catch on fire? Was that a control burn or?
That was a control burn with a demolition permit.
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
we were there just for safety's sake, but yeah, that was all done through the proper chains for demolition.
Okay. Yeah, I was just surprised that it just disappeared. I said it was awfully quick. I've never seen something happen so quick. And I was like, boy, I wanted that insurance company. Okay, thank you very much.
So are you going to show up as a phone number or are you? Okay. All right, Mr. Wolf, Mr. Hodges is back on. He just needs to be unmuted.
I don't see him, Mr. Miskowski.
No, I don't see him either, but he said he was back in. Is he? He's not in the waiting room, is he?
No, sir.
Hmm.
Did he come in under iPad?
That should be him.
There we go. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Okay, we're back in order. Next up, we have 5B Vision Software Update by Ms. Teagle.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Got you loud and clear.
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to give an update about Vision, which is our real estate appraisal software. Back in October, we integrated them and went live. We're currently congruently running Vision and our legacy software, which is Bright, for all real estate appraisal information. All ownership transfers, plats, address changes, and any other updates that we do with real estate are being done in both systems. During our conversion to Vision back in the fall, because we were so close to having our reassessment go live January 1st, we did convert the defunct reassessment values. So Vision is now working to revert the 2021 values to the 2020 values in order for them to be the most up to date. Right now, I haven't been given a timeline of when this will be done, but I did hear from them that it takes about a week, and that was last Friday. So hopefully that will be done soon. As of April 5th, the GIS on the King William website is now being hosted by Vision. So this allows us to have everything more integrated. So as changes are made in the Vision system, they'll be made on our GIS as well. GIS is still under construction regarding all ownership, zoning, and other updates. There are a few kinks that they're trying to work out. And kind of as taxpayers are using the GIS system and calling and letting us know certain things they see, it helps us work the bugs out. The current timeline to have all GIS information up to date is by May 1st. So that's going to have all plats done, all ownership, basically any changes that we've had in real estate since October is going to be pulled over by May 1st. Does anybody have any questions?
Ms. Teagle, are there other functions or features that are available that we may not be taking advantage of at this point?
So Vision does offer some other appraisal avenues such as personal property. We're not using them for that specifically because we're using Edmunds for that. Edmunds is going to be doing our finance, tax, AR, so meals tax and business license, and as well as our permitting. The only thing that Edmunds did not offer was appraisal for real estate. So that's the reason that we don't use Vision for personal property tax per se, because it's more integrated with our Edmunds system.
Okay.
Ms. Teagle, I was just wondering, when does the Bright system actually go out, sunsetted? Just curious, when it won't be supported anymore at all.
So we're not sure a timeline when we're not going to run them congruently anymore. I'm hoping that this will be our last billing cycle for real estate out of Bright. So basically the real estate books will be run in Bright, but billing will be done in Edmunds. And then by the next real estate billing, we will be on Vision's 100%.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Travis, if I may, when are
Go ahead.
the next real estate billings? When do they go out? May?
May 1st is when the real estate book is ran.
So
and then it
we're not
normally
looking
takes
for
a
this to
couple
be an
weeks.
issue? I'm sorry.
No, No, so because we are running Bright and Vision congruently, we can do our real estate book out of Bright. That's not a problem at all.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, well, that's the question that I had, so that covers that. So if no one else has, thank you very much, Ms. Teagle.
You're welcome.
Thank you for all your hard work getting this system transition done.
Of course.
Okay, moving on, we have the Edmunds software update from Mr. Wolf.
Good evening, board.
Evening.
Evening.
So quick update on our Edmunds software. The finance department here at the county did go live back in November. Followed shortly behind was payroll. NETA started running payroll in December. We pushed King William County Public Schools off to January, but now everyone is on schedule working. There are a few kinks as all with migrating to a new software, but Edmunds has been very good with answering those questions and working to solve those quickly. All three are working in Edmunds, but we still do have to work in Bright right now before or until we go live with the tax and permitting. The current timeline for that, we're looking to go live May 3rd with the tax and Commissioner of Revenue's offices. Permitting we don't have a hard date for permitting yet. We're looking to get that hopefully by the end of this week or maybe next week, but it will be in the month of May. As Emily did say, we will be running the books out of the Bright system, but we will be billing from the Edmunds system for this year. There was a slight change with where the databases will be held. King William County Public Schools decided that they wanted to host their database in the cloud that is provided from Edmunds. You could probably ask them more, but it seems like the cost for them to put in VPN access to connect to our server was going to be more than what the cost was for them to host their portion of it in the cloud. We still here at the county have access to their database, so that does not cause any issues there. We are currently working with a very slow process with VITA to get Department of Social Services and also Ms. Frazier over at VJCCC access through VPN. Their firewall system is very robust. So we're working, I'm working with their IT departments to get those in place. Another thing that has happened recently is Charles Huntley is the new IT director at Essex. And he and I had a conversation last week regarding some of the issues that their locality is having. He had suggested that he and I start a group with other localities, currently Kilmarnock, Urbana, Tappahannock, and we know Colonial Beach schools are using Edmunds, potentially bringing a group together, coming up with our common issues and going to Edmunds as a group as opposed to individual localities. It seems that, you know, if we come in and say, hey, we're having an issue or we would like to have this module changed as an individual, they're not as willing to put in the time to get that changed as much as they would for a group of people. Also, one thing that I did not put in the memo that I thought of earlier today that I wanted to bring up is in the financial system, this gives us the ability to have individuals or employees actually enter their timesheets and let the supervisors approve them. Currently in Bright, Mrs. McIntyre has to manually enter all of those timesheets into Bright, so this will give her quite a bit of time back. I know it doesn't affect everyone in the county, but it does affect her, and I know she's appreciative of that. We're currently testing that now and hope to have that up and running soon. That's all I have. Does anyone have any questions?
Board members?
Mr. Wolf, Ed Moran. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand the school's ability to use Edmunds is somewhat limited. Any Any information on that?
The big issue, from what I understand with them on the limitation, is the controls that they put in place. They have multiple people that have to approve everything that happens, and Edmonds is not currently in a position to apply all of those controls. That seems to be the common theme that whenever I talk to Mr. Brufy and Mrs. Longus over there.
That's due to the different contracts the teachers have, I believe.
Correct. They have, in some cases, 5 or 6 people that have to, 5 or 6 steps of approval.
Are you confident that Edmonds, it can be adapted to be able to do what they need to do at some point?
Yes, sir. They've had that conversation. And I know that they've also spoken with Colonial Beach schools also to see maybe if the schools could change the way their controls are in place. If not, if they have to stay that way, then Edmonds is willing to work with them to get it as seamless as possible.
Very good. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? All right, I know this is a somewhat painful process, but I think we kind of knew that going in. So just continue the work on it. You know, we'll work it out eventually. Got to be better than bright in the end, right?
Yes, sir.
So, right, I know that a lot of people are looking forward to that. And yes, very good news for Ms. McIntyre on that that timesheet stuff. I know that on my wife's side, William and Mary, that's how they do it, is a method like we're describing moving to. So would very much support that. So thanks a lot. Nice suit, man. I don't think I've ever seen you.
Doesn't happen very often, but thank you.
I think you embarrassed him, Travis.
Shouldn't be. It's a high compliment. I haven't even put on a suit in months. Like
Either.
put on a suit since
We will
Christmas.
soon.
Mr. Chair, you did on Easter.
Right. I
Was
said
it
no.
Easter
Easter's the first time I
bunny
put on a
suit?
suit since probably Christmas, and this is coming from multiple times a
Oh.
month. So, all right. Next up, Ms. Journalin with the King William County School Transfer Update.
Evening. Included in the board packet this evening is a summary of the transfers from Treasurer's Office from the county operating bank account to the school's operating bank account through March 31st, 2021. Total transferred to schools is $8,500,767. The remaining funds appropriated for 2021 to be transferred is $3,521,047. Also included is a summary for the county revenues received for school funding through February 28, 2021. The total funds received by the county to support school funding is $9,373,892. Are there any questions?
I'll chime in at once.
Can we ask our question about something totally different or wait?
Let's stick to the subjects at hand right now.
All right. Okay. Nothing on this.
All right. So if there's nothing on this, then Ms. Journalin is also up for item E, which is the revenues and expenditures. Well, she just kind of went over that with us. Are there any questions on that?
No, this is something different.
All right, keep me straight. I'm struggling.
Okay, to update the board on FY21 expenditures and revenues through March 31st, 2021, we have included in this evening's packet information on revenues received and expenditures not included in the FY21 budget projections. FY21 budget was prepared and approved in April 2020 with a conservative approach to projections for FY21 due to the COVID pandemic. First half of calendar year 2021 real estate taxes will be due June 25th of this fiscal year. So the revenues that you see do not include that first half coming, that we won't receive that until the end of June. Revenues appear to be stable, which will in turn offset additional expenditures that were not part of the FY21 budget projections. In attachment B, we've outlined these revenues and expenditures. Some of the additional expenditures include Treasurer's Office turnover audits at the cost of $15,000 each. The turnover audit for Ms. Bancroft by independent certified public accountant is still pending. This is an audit of accounts pertaining to local and other funds. The auditor of public accounts has completed the audit of accounts pertaining to state funds for the turnover audit. Additional auditing services above and beyond the annual audit. Leave out pay for employees. When we started preparing 22's budget, we decided to actually reach out to some of the department heads that we anticipated would have some potential retirements. So what we want to do moving forward is actually budget for those leave out pays in 22. Middle Peninsula Regional Center budget for the fiscal year was $851,313. The final invoice for fourth quarter has been received, and the total cost for 21 is $924,401. So those are things that we kind of wanted to just keep the board aware of. We'll go ahead and do some amendments to the budget so we can move some of these additional revenues that we have received for 21 to kind of offset those expenditures. And I don't know if you guys noticed the $35,000 that we actually received this year for the game of skill tax. That actually goes away July 1. That is something the state did just for 1 year.
Too bad.
Yeah. Those are those gas station games that they allowed and then promptly decided to ban when kids started to show up at the door.
Yeah.
All right, if there aren't any questions, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item.
Okay. At the request of the Board of Supervisors, we have completed an exercise to illustrate tax rate reduction from 86 to 85 cents. If the county and county-town tax rate reduced 1 penny and the school remained the same, the shortfall to meet county administrators' recommended 22 expenditure budget would be $168,530. The recommended school appropriation by the county administrator would remain the same at $9,654,597. If the school's tax rate reduced 1 penny and the county and town remained the same, the school appropriation would be reduced to $9,518,971, a difference of $135,626. There would be no shortfall to meet the county administrator's recommended 22 expenditures budget.
Would you repeat that last statement, please?
So for the county, what the county administrator has recommended for expenditures for 22, we would not have a shortfall to reduce the tax to 85. That's if we reduced it on the school side, 1 penny. Okay. But the school's appropriation would then have to come down from what the county administrator had recommended.
So we would still have to find extra revenue.
Yeah.
Somewhere.
You would have to find cuts at that point in time.
Yeah. Same. Yeah, that's what I meant.
One way or another. I mean, it's a balloon. Yeah. You squeeze it on one side, you get, you know, we're gonna make this on the county side. You squeeze it the other way, you make schools bear that pain. It's taking away one way or another.
Yeah, it's a catch 22.
Well, right. Well, it's not an opportunity to reduce because of, revenues coming in higher than anticipated or anything, or the reassessments or anything like that. This would just be, you would have to find a way to reduce your expenditures by a commensurate amount.
Well, Mr. Chair, I certainly appreciate staff doing this. I asked for it. Gives a clear picture of the impact. And again, thank you very much for doing it.
Anyone else?
No, Mr. Chair, I would just say, hasn't it not gone up quite a bit over a week? I thought it used to be like 1 cent was about 125,000. And now it's all the way up to 168. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
Well, it's always been higher on the general fund side than on the school side because you throw the
Okay.
ad valorem of the town into the equation.
Right.
So it's yes, it's crept up, but since the last reassessment back in 2015, it's not shot up by a crazy amount. It's basically commensurate with how we've seen the revenues come in and then reduce the tax rate accordingly. So. Anyone else? All right. All right, on to old business. We have what I suppose would be 6A, Planning Commission discussion. Mr. Hudgens.
Thank you. This is following up on a discussion from about a month ago with the board about the possibility of changing how the Planning Commission is constituted, getting equal representation from each district for the Planning Commission. There was a question about one, how was the Planning Commission actually created? Was it by resolution or by ordinance? Our records show it was by resolution. And there was also a question about whether or not the Indian tribes might like to have specific representation if we needed to hold a seat for them. Staff reached out to each of the tribes. 2 have not responded. The Upper Mattaponi responded in the negative to being part of the Planning Commission, but was interested in at least being part of the steering committee of the comp plan. Included in this packet is, as an attachment, is a summary of planning commissions in jurisdictions that do have Indian tribes. It breaks it down. Most of them have equal representation from each district, but do not hold a special seat for an Indian tribe. In fact, none of them hold a special seat for the Indian tribes. One district, I believe, does have a member of a tribe on the Planning Commission, but it is not by special seat. They all the jurisdictions answered that they just count them just like any other citizen in the county. So,
okay, Mr. Garber, Mr. Greenwood, this is your initiative. I will allow either one of you the floor.
You want verse
Are you
Stuart?
there?
Yeah. You want to go, Stuart? Are you muted?
No? Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else can hear us. No, I'm
Yeah,
not muted. If
You
you
cut out for a minute.
Oh. Yeah, I think they can hear.
I can hear both of you just fine.
Okay, your screen is frozen. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm still in the same place. I feel like all the adjoining counties have representation per district. 4th district doesn't. It's just the last planning commission. I think they had 2 items from the 4th district: King William Sand and Gravel and a airstrip. It just keeps on going. It's no specified representation for the 4th district. You know, my recommendation was to do maybe what King and Queen and you can do 2 per district, but I understand it's not a whole lot of agreement there. To me, the only other thing to do is go to 1 per district. If we do a at-large, that's not going to solve the problem. You know, it's something that can continually happen at the end of someone's term. You know, the way that we do it, you know, it's not necessarily a sitting member, you know, in that district. It can come to a vote of the board members, and it needs to be specified that particular district, who that representative is from it. That's been my opinion all along. However y'all feel to arrive at it, I think that's what we need to do.
Okay, and I'll chime in as well. At first, I was under a different impression, but now I'm the same opinion as Stuart, that there should be 1 mandatory from each district. And then the Board of Supervisor representative will be an at-large, because that member can be from any of the districts. So that way we would be guaranteed 1 person from every district. And the issue with the reservations, Indian tribes, anybody can put in for the Planning Commission post that's empty, as was well noted at our last meeting. Chief, it's not Costello, Chief, the standing, yeah, he was a supervisor at one time, so any of them can be on the boards. And as I was talking with Mr. Tuppence, he said that they didn't want an actual seat, but they would like to be involved. And that's why I wanted to bring up, we can form under the Planning Commission any committee that could have, maybe we should have a former committee that has members from the school board, members from the Indian tribes, members from all sorts of avenues that would have the input into what the Planning Commission does and can relate back to their individual groups. And that way the information can get out. And I think that was the main issue that was being brought up. When we first started, this wasn't anything about making the Planning Commission bigger. It got all blown out of proportion. We just want equal representation for every district. And I'm on board with what Stuart says now, 1 per district mandatory. And then the Board of Supervisor person will be at large. And then, but like I said, the way we go about it, that's going to be the issue. And I don't know if that has to be something that has to be discussed in closed session, or if we can talk about that in open meeting.
Unless we're talking about an appointment of an individual, it all needs to be discussed in open session.
Okay. And like if Stuart wanted to talk about the fairness, I guess the best fair way, if we kept it as 1 per district, unfortunately, I guess the next opening of a Planning Commission person would be the one that would go. Unfortunately, that's not the way, I guess, that we really wanted it to go. But if that's to make it fair, that's what would happen. So, and at the last one, as Mr. Hudgens was saying, back when we went from a larger group to a smaller group, that's when they did it. They did it when terms were about to expire. They just incorporated it so that that person would just be let go. It was easier, I guess. And I guess, like you said, that's the fairest way to do it. But that's up to the board. I guess we would need to decide what we wanted to do.
My concern right now is that the timing of this, you're right, both feet into the middle of the comp planning zoning ordinances. Is this the right time to be adding a new member to the group?
Like Stuart said, it's the exact right time, because 4th district has no representation at all. And that's a lot of stuff going on in that district that needs to be represented.
And how does it impact what the group comes up with the comp plans? How does that impact it? Others don't know what.
Because the 4th district is equal to any other district. And it is a lot of things going on in the 4th district.
And they don't know what's going on in the 4th.
Some people in the 4th district might not be the same as people in the 5th, or the 1st, or the 2nd, or the 3rd. I mean.
So you're going to have unique 4th district planning issues.
It could very be, you know, actually, if you want to get into that, the solar farm, it was no representation for the 4th district. I recused myself. That vote was 3-2. If it had been somebody from the 4th, it may have been 3-2 the other way. And the board could have either decided whether they wanted to listen to the recommendation of the planning commission or not.
Couldn't have been 3-2 if you recused yourself.
He's
I'm
talking
about the
planning
planning
commission
commission vote.
Okay.
Mr.
We
Hodges.
can, you know, we can just go on record
Well-
and vote, and everybody will know how y'all feel. I mean,
Right. So
That's
I want to
just
give
the way
everybody an
I feel.
opportunity to speak on it before we do anything else. Mr. Hodges, haven't heard from you yet. You got any thoughts?
Well, I do. And as always, I think it ought to be fair, even though we don't have a representative from the district. We have our own planning. I think it ought to be one from every district. You know, and I know it's terrible when you have to drop one out or change that person, but I think it's only fair that each district is represented.
And I just wanted to segue that effect too. There's a bad time, as Mr. Moran was saying, any time is a bad time. I don't like to be getting rid of anybody, but at this particular time, it does seem to be worse. But like I said, that it could happen at any time. It's just unfortunate.
So I think
Yeah.
here, I think here the merit of the argument needs to be based on, again, the effect that it has on those that are currently effectively disenfranchised, and not on any individual membership of the planning commission. And I certainly would, if it were my district that were not represented on the planning commission, be doing everything I could to make sure that we were. Because it's a fair point that each district, and I, you know, just in the discussion tonight, the differences that we face between development pressures in the 5th versus the 2nd are enough to illuminate to me the need to have equal representation on the planning commission, regardless of the makeup of the individuals on said commission. I think it's important enough that we need to go ahead and, as we do, ask that commission to deliberate on these important matters coming up, that each district feels as though they were represented and their voices were heard. Yeah, I'd agree with Mr. Garber. I'd certainly be, I would be advocating the same thing if I were in his position, and I can't deny that.
So do we need to make a motion, or how should we proceed?
Well, that's a good question, because the bylaws are, I think, technically adopted by the planning commission. Really, it's in the bylaws, it's the purview of the Board of Supervisors to appoint members to their stated terms. So that may be a question for legal, how we actually need to do that. Do we need to, have a resolution? Do we need to ask the planning commission to amend their bylaws? And that's an answer that I don't have. Perhaps somebody in the building has that answer. I'll toss it over to Mr. Hudgens if he has some input there.
Nothing definitive. I recall Mr. McRoberts speaking that it typically wasn't an ordinance. It was more about just policy of the board, if the board wanted to write it in, as that is how they would be appointing commissioners.
Right. And I know there's always been the question of whether or not in code, it can then be codified in local ordinance or local resolution one way or another, but certainly it can be a policy of the board how we apportion these seats. And generally speaking, I know that the General Assembly has carried that one Board of Supervisors really in these policy matters can't handcuff another subsequent Board of Supervisors. So again, those may be questions for legal, but I think we probably have agreement that we want to, in whatever appropriate manner, adopt for at least this board, the policy that the planning commission will be apportioned one per district in second, third, fourth, and fifth, with the addition of the board of supervisors member.
I agree.
Right,
I
so
agree.
we can find out whatever action is appropriate to take to affect that, have that ready for the end of the month meeting. Would that satisfy everybody?
I'm good with that.
Yeah.
I'm good with
Because
that.
I don't think the appointment comes back up until June. Am I correct? Or is it
Right,
earlier than that?
right.
It's June. Okay, so we have until then, because I think the other important thing regardless of whatever changes we're making, I think we can either appoint or not reappoint, but I don't think anything that I saw in code gives us the ability to remove a commission member for anything not spelled out in that particular code section.
Right.
Exactly. That's why we had the closed session. That's why we had this. Thank you.
Yeah. Does anyone have anything they want to add, or just take this back up at the end of the month?
Yep. Just
I'm
bring
good
it
with taking it up at the end of the month.
Okay. All right.
After checking on the legal side, correct?
Right.
Or
Exactly.
the process.
Right.
Right. So
And
yeah,
is this-
go ahead, Mr. Moore.
I'm sorry, has this position been advertised properly, and do we have applications, Mr. Hudgens?
It has not been advertised, so to speak, as we haven't known that we were going to have an opening.
Okay.
There have been, Ed, I know there have been applications that have had people,
Correct.
yeah,
Right.
have
But we
asked
have
me what
until-
happened to them, but I don't know if you got one from the fourth. I don't know that.
And that's
Well,
another-
we have time. We have time.
Right. So
Oh, yeah.
we have time to fill the spot. But I want to go ahead and take care of the action and close the loop on the debate and then taking whatever final action we need to take at the end of the month. And then we'll have until that appointment comes due to advertise and gather applications.
Exactly. And that's another point I'd like to segue into. We do need to figure out something for that specific issue, because like we said, we have seen issues with applications not being brought to us that have been brought to our attention that are in the record somewhere. So we need to find a better way to make sure we all get all the applications that are in there, because every application that goes for any commission is supposed to be held for 2 years. Some of the ones that are put in there are for any commission. So somehow we have to come up with a system. And I like Mr. Moran's idea when he first came on to the board. He was talking about some kind of a system where we had issues, if things we talk about, anything, somehow have some kind of spreadsheet so we know how to follow these things. Because sometimes stuff falls through the cracks. We don't know where stuff is, if it's been dealt with. If we had a spreadsheet that had all the applications that are turned in, a date that they would go dead after 2 years of their initial creation, and all the departments that they go for, then we would know, we'd have a set of applications to go through when these things came up.
I'm sure we can come up with some sort of form work and spreadsheet and just general policy on how to keep track of that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hudson.
Okay, next up, we have review of the proposed agenda for April 16th. If everyone could take a look at that.
Mr. Chair, are we expecting presentations to accompany these timelines or?
I know not all.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead.
Want me to go ahead? Yeah, for the ones that are slotted before our 3 o'clock, when you guys are turned over to me and to Steve, yes, you will have actual representation from everyone and a presentation from them.
I guess my main question is, will we have access to study these before they're, well, the first time we'll see them is at the actual presentation?
No, what you'll have, the information that they present, no, we won't have before they are here, but they will be working off of what has been presented to you in your binder.
Okay.
And I guess if somebody skips it or doesn't want to do something, we can push it up, because last time I think we were able to go through them a little bit faster because some people didn't show up. Or is that, I mean, will people know to be waiting maybe before their time slot if it's something comes up beforehand?
The only thing that I think we might be at the 1 o'clock, I do think Chief Reese has let me know that West Point will not be here. So other than that, everyone else, we should be right on time with the timeline.
Okay.
Right. See, I knew there was one.
Right.
I have a little bit of stuff there.
Sure.
Chief Bartos actually has given some information to Chief Reeves to actually present at that time too.
So if someone takes, if they're allotted a half hour and they take 15 minutes, will the next presenter be ready to, I mean, can we get them?
Right. We're going to try to keep everybody in the loop. Yes. So if we do get ahead of schedule,
Okay.
we're going to have, someone from our office, my office will actually be in touch with them to let them know, maybe come a little bit earlier.
Yeah.
Right. That was going to be my note, because I know that at least one time in the past, we've had a certain constitutional officer get a little bit upset because we ran ahead of schedule without letting them know. So as long as we are keeping touch, I'm all for efficiency. So if there's something that doesn't need to take a half an hour, then I'm not going to belabor it. But we do need to make sure that people know when they're expected and that they don't miss their opportunity to present. We'll be flexible and we'll work with, it's a busy day for us and it's a work day for everybody else. So we just have to be accommodating and mindful of that.
Well, keep in mind, I only gave Chief Reeves a half an hour, so he might take an hour.
Nope.
Really?
Mr. Chair, recommended showtime?
I'm sorry.
Recommended showtime for the board?
Well, I'm going to gavel in at 9. So be ready to listen at 9, however early you need to get there to do that. I'd rather us not be mulling around trying to get coffee and donuts and stuff while people are trying to present. So I'd like us all in position and ready at 9 o'clock.
Okay.
I'll be here.
Okay, well, it sounds like we're ready to roll with this. So go ahead and put the word out to the presenters of their expectation and how we expect the flow to go.
Mr. Chair, this is in person, correct?
Right. So this is going to start this is going to be meeting 1 of our transition back to in-person meetings. Now, if there are any board members, like I know Mr. Garber, you're out of town, right?
Yeah,
So
I'm in North Carolina.
you'll have access via Zoom. We'll still be broadcasting via Zoom, so the public has the opportunity to participate by that method. Of course, capacity in the boardroom itself will be limited by how many we can accommodate with proper social distancing. So we're going to be as broad as possible, but we are going to be primarily conducting this meeting in person, and then we're going to be doing that going forward. Same method. Meetings will be in person with the Zoom option. In-person attendance is going to be limited by whatever the restrictions are at the time. Okay.
All right.
Well, we have it down as board comments. Typically at the work session, we've tried to keep this as opposed to a broader comment section to a to do anything on your mind that you think we need to take up at a future work session. Go ahead and list your ideas. So let me put myself back in grid mode. And Mr. Garber, anything on your mind?
The only thing that I have, the amended agendas, I think we probably need to tighten those up, you know, especially for somebody like me that's out of town. It's pretty cumbersome. I think our bylaws say that we're supposed to get those packets a week in advance. And I do understand that things come up. But unless it's an emergency, I'd like to see us not change it as often, amend it as often. That's all.
Mr. Greenwood?
Yeah, now that he brought that up, that is one thing I'd like to see too, especially because we're having the closed session tonight. And like you and I both, we had to do all the stuff that we had to do to try and get the amended agenda amended again. And I have not even been able to open the stuff up for the closed session meeting because I have to work all day. And since it just came in this morning, I'm going to have a difficulty going over any of that stuff that we're going to be talking about. So that's the issue I have. I think we should have pushed that off to another meeting. And I also brought up the thing about the board, the boards, and we already talked about that. Hopefully Mr. Hudgens is going to take care of that. And, I don't have anything else to add right now.
Mr. Moore?
I have nothing, sir.
Mr. Hodges?
I think at least 3 districts feel the same way. These things coming out on Mondays, and you know, I'm at work a lot, just about every Monday all day long, and I get home and I didn't even know something had come out. And until Mr. Greenwood called me and told me that there had been something. I have not looked at it either, so I don't know where we'll go in this closed session, but that's where I stand.
Well, Mr. Chair,
we need
may I
to get it.
recommend everybody gets texts. Could Mr. Hudgens send everyone a group text letting us know that there are things that are new? Would that help you at all?
It would a little bit, Ed, but if I'm in a jury trial at 5 o'clock, you know.
Well, yeah, that's understandable, but just in general.
It would help, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Any communications would help.
Okay.
Like I said, I knew it was there, but I can't get to it. I knew it was there when it came in at 10:30, but I cannot get to it either. I'm at work all day. I get a lunch break. I get a dinner break. I haven't eaten dinner yet. So I don't have time in the half hour between when I get off work and when they start this meeting to go over all this stuff that came out today. Like Mr. Stewart said, it needs to be a week in advance.
All right, no disagreement there, and I don't think staff would disagree with you either, guys. You know, we're flying, you know, some of us unfamiliar water, so it will get better, no doubt about that. So yes, I think consensus is we definitely need to be getting these items, you know, done and in on the agenda as timely as possible, and avoid adding things the day of. Because, you know, same here. I work, so I'm having to carve out time to review these things before we get into the meeting. So, but again, I think staff is sensitive to that, and right now they're doing the best they can with a compacted schedule with budget going on. So it'll get better. I've got confidence in that. Okay, so as mentioned a few times, we do have a closed meeting that we're going to conduct here. Mr. Moore, do you have the motion?
Yes, sir. In accordance with section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia, I move that the Board of Supervisors convene in closed meeting to consider a personnel matter involving the interview of a prospective candidate for employment.
Second.
Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Vice Chair Moran,
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Chairman Miskowski.
Aye. All right, we'll be back in a bit.
All right, Mr. Wolf is going to transfer us.
Puppy.
Right. The dog says we're back in order.
Yeah. we're back.
What kind of dog is that, Travis?
If you can't tell, there's a lot of hound dog in that bark there, Stuart.
Really? I can't see him or her.
Yeah, she's part blue tick hound and part German shepherd, but if you looked at her, you
Really?
would say blue tick hound. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. I will take a motion on SR1.
Mr. Chair, I move that we accept SR1.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Roll call, please.
Mr. Moran,
Aye.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Chairman Miskowski.
Aye. And if there is no other action, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll
So
make a
moved.
motion to adjourn.
I
Second.
think you had second and everything. in it.
We're ready to go. Moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Mr. Greenwood,
Aye.
Mr. Hodges,
Aye.
Mr. Garber,
Aye.
Mr. Moran,
Aye.
Chairman Miskowski.
Aye. Travis, don't end the meeting until I change my name back. Hold on.
Ah.
You can do that.
Borrowing Aaron's computer. If I don't change her name back, it'll show up as mine in her morning meeting.
Oh.
I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
You'll be good.
Good night.